What if I told you that one of the greatest military victories in the Bible didn't begin with a sword, but with a woman sitting under a palm tree? Her name was Deborah. She wasn't a warrior. She didn't come from royalty, but she walked so closely with God that when no man would rise up, she did. In a time of national fear, God used Deborah to stir courage, crush injustice, and lead Israel to peace. And today, her story just might awaken something in you too. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll see how God can use anyone, especially you, to lead, to fight, and to walk boldly in your purpose. Before we talk about who Deborah was, we need to talk about when Deborah was. Because this wasn't just any time in Israel's history. This was the time of the Judges, a dark, chaotic, and often frightening chapter. Judges 21:25 says it best. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. It sounds like total freedom, but what it actually produced was confusion, corruption, and cruelty. The people would forget God, chase after idols, and then find themselves trapped under the weight of foreign oppression. And this time, the oppressor was Jabin, king of Canaan. But the real terror wasn't Jabin. It was his military commander, Sisera. This man commanded 900 chariots of iron. Think of them like ancient tanks, brutal, unstoppable. For 20 years he crushed the Israelites with fear and violence. Now imagine this. The roads were empty. Women and children stayed inside, terrified. Farmers couldn't grow. Traders couldn't trade. Judges 5:6-7 paints it like this. The highways were abandoned. Travelers took to winding paths. Villagers in Israel would not fight. They held back. Israel had leaders, but they were hiding. Soldiers, but no courage. Prophets, but no voice. It was as if the nation's heart had stopped beating. But then comes Deborah. We meet her in Judges 4:4. Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at that time. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't retreating. She wasn't waiting for someone else. She was listening. She was judging disputes, speaking God's word, holding space for the people when no one else would. And she didn't do it in a palace or with fanfare. She sat under a palm tree, a symbol of peace and strength. It's called the Palm of Deborah, between Ramah and Bethel, in the hill country of Ephraim. That's where the people would come to her, not for her opinion, but for God's direction. You know what that tells us? In a world full of noise, God still speaks to those who are still enough to listen. In a culture of fear, faith can look like quietly showing up every single day. Deborah wasn't seeking a title, she was walking with God. And that walk, steady, bold, unseen by most, is what set the stage for everything that came next. Now here's where the story shifts from stillness to strategy. One day, Deborah receives a word from God, a clear instruction. This wasn't just a personal revelation, it was a call to action. Judges 4:6-7 says, She sent for Barak, son of Abinoam from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, Go, take with you 10,000 men, and lead them to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera into your hands. Let's pause. God already had a victory prepared. All Barak had to do was walk into it. But listen to what Barak says in verse 8. If you go with me, I'll go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go. Whoa. This is a trained commander, a man who's seen battles. But the fear, it's real. After all, Sisera's army had chariots. Israel had sandals. But what Barak saw in Deborah wasn't just a judge. He saw someone walking so closely with God, he didn't want to move without her near. Now, let's not judge Barak too quickly. How often do we do the same thing? God, I'll obey. but only if someone else goes first. I'll take the step, but only if you guarantee the outcome. Barak needed a nudge. Deborah gave it. In Judges 4:9, she responds, "Certainly I will go with you, but because of the course you are taking, the honor will not be yours, for the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman." This wasn't a punishment. It was a prophecy. And it showed something powerful. Deborah didn't care about credit. She cared about obedience. She didn't have to be the hero. She just had to follow God's voice. Can you imagine the tension? Deborah, a woman in a patriarchal world, was now leading the charge into battle, not because she wanted power, not because she had training, but because when God calls you to move, you don't wait for someone else to say yes. And Barak, though hesitant at first, chose faith over fear. He didn't just take orders from Deborah, he took courage from her faith. If this part of the story is stirring your heart, go ahead and like this video. It helps it reach more people who need these stories of courage and faith. And stay with me, because what happens in the battle is straight up miraculous. The morning of the battle arrives. Mount Tabor rises ahead, and down below, Sisera's army thunders in. His iron chariots gleam in the sun. He has everything: speed, strength, and strategy. Israel? They have anxiety and a promise. Imagine being one of those 10,000 men. You've got no chariot, no armor, just a sword, maybe a shield, and a command to march against the most feared commander in the region. What gets you to move? Not weapons. Faith. That's when Deborah turns to Barak and speaks 9 powerful words that change everything. Judges 4:14. Up! This is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you? Has not the Lord gone ahead of you? She wasn't saying, "You've got this." She was saying, "God already has this." And friend, sometimes that's the only thing that gets us through. Not the confidence in our strength, but confidence that God is already ahead of us. As Barak charges, something supernatural happens. Judges 5:4-5 and 20-21, Deborah's victory song, tells us, "The earth shook, the heavens poured, the clouds poured down water, the river Kishon swept them away." That's right. A divine storm hits. God sends rain, torrential, muddy, unrelenting rain. The battlefield becomes a swamp, and all those iron chariots, useless, trapped, sinking. The very thing Sisera trusted in, his strength, his wheels, was the first thing God dismantled. Barak and his army sweep through with the boldness that only obedience can bring. Every Canaanite soldier falls, every chariot fails, and Sisera, he flees on foot, alone, defeated, and desperate. You can't write a better turning point than that, and here's what we learn. When God says, "Go," He's already cleared the path, especially when it doesn't look like it. Victory doesn't always begin with force. Sometimes it begins with faith. Drop a comment. Has God ever asked you to move forward when you were scared? Your story might encourage someone else. After the dust settled, Deborah didn't boast. She worshipped. Judges 5 is a song of praise to the God who rescued, the people who stepped up, and the peace that followed. Let's pause here. What can we learn from her story? Lesson 1. You don't need a title to lead, just God's voice. Deborah wasn't a general, she wasn't even asked, but she stood up when others sat down. Lesson 2. Faith doesn't mean you're not afraid, it means you move forward anyway. Barak was scared. Deborah went with him, but she never let fear dictate the mission. Lesson 3. God uses ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things. Deborah listened. Jael acted. God moved. That's the rhythm of faith. And maybe that's your next step too. Which of these lessons spoke to you most? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And I'd love to hear your story. Deborah didn't carry a sword. She carried God's word. She didn't chase influence. She stood in obedience. And because of that, she led a nation to freedom. So here's the real question. What's your palm tree? Where has God planted you to speak truth, offer peace, or take a stand? You don't need to be the loudest voice in the room, just the one who's listening to God. Because when you walk with Him, He goes before you. Thanks for watching. If Deborah's courage inspired you, share this with someone who needs a reminder that faith is powerful, especially in the hands of someone willing to act. Until next time, keep walking with God. He's still writing stories like Deborah's, and yours might be next.